Thank you. Your discussion with Senator Miles raised a question, particularly as regards Jefferson Davis. And a slave owner, some people say that as the president of the Confederacy, the act of secession was one of sedition and things like that. What does this historical figure mean to you?
Jefferson Davis, what does he mean to me?
Yeah.
Not much. I mean, if you're asking, I mean, my consideration for this legislation today is not centered around my concern or regard for Jefferson Davis. I understand he was president of the Confederacy and also held high military positions in the United States military prior. Legislatures long ago decided, including with the portraits behind me now, exactly how this chamber would balance out. And I think, as indicated by my discussion with Senator Miles, it's not far from the balance that we find on the Capitol grounds as we walk through time, and we're able to educate our kids and family members and those that come here on school field trips about that balance. So what is the significance? It's a balance in time, and it's a history we own. And I think for the kids that visit this gallery and they either see us discussing this legislation today or other experiences they have, it shows that we own that history and we also own that balance. And that's the extent of my regard for the individual you mentioned.
I've been, over the last few days, been getting a lot of phone calls that don't erase history. History is what happened. It's not just what people remember. History is what happened. Do you believe that history can be erased?
Well, and I understand your point. History cannot be erased, but we can shove it in a drawer, we can ignore it, we can fail to teach it, and the history still exists, Senator Seliger, but the generations forward don't quite understand it the way that it would be powerful to know how we've advanced and walked this walk through Texas and improved from our past over time, unless, like me as a kid, I could have found it through paying admission to a museum in a big city 44 miles south of my hometown, but without these monuments and public spaces and the ability to find them free of charge, I wouldn't have learned possibly in the way that I have about our history and what we face, good, bad, and ugly.
In your comments earlier, you had said that just changing the name of a park is not proscribed by this bill, but in fact, in the bill it talks about changing the name of parks and shields and things like that. And so this has to do with the names of parks.
I don't know if I said it incorrectly or maybe you might have misunderstood what I said, but yes, the scope of the bill does speak to parks. I was making the distinction that either areas or parks, as mentioned in the bill, may not cover Muni Golf Course. And so I was saying the bill does cover areas and parks, but golf courses, I'm not so sure, other than the fact that if it was university-owned land and it was named after a historical figure, then maybe the scope of the bill would be in play and relevant.
What constitutes a historical figure?
Someone that had an impact in time over history that, those later determined to be significant. It could be, as you and I and all the members on this floor might determine who in the present day is and will be a historical figure. It's subjective, I would imagine.
Now, it's historical figures or events or things like that. There is an Amarillo in Elwood Park. For the life of me, I don't know who it was named for. The city came along in about 1888, and so it was somebody who was significant in Amarillo at one time. Probably means nothing to you. But in this case, is local note or fame constitute the historical status that you're talking about if somebody wanted to rename Elwood Park?
You're speaking to why the origin of the name existed and was felt to be significant?
No, I'm saying since this person meant something at some time in Amarillo because the park was named for him more than 25 years ago, do you concede that that is a historic figure, and if they wanted to rename the park, then it would be subject to your bill?
My opinion would be that that's up to those that named that park years ago. And,
but they're all dead, and they can't make that decision. The point is if someone wanted to go in and change the name of that park, would they be subject to this bill and have to put it to a vote of the people?
If it was reasonable to conclude that that person was of historical significance, I would imagine that it would be in the bill. If, as you mentioned, under your hypothetical, that a park named after John Smith, who had absolutely no significant bearing on history whatsoever, the name was attempted to be changed, would it fall under the scope of the bill? I would contend that it probably would not, but at some point that becomes arguable.
But what if John Smith was significant in that municipality?
From a historical standpoint, I'm sure that is significant enough.
When we talk about street signs, if you're reconfiguring a highway, in lots of towns probably have grant streets, and you wanted to change it around and things like that, once again, you'd have to have a municipal election to change that street sign. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. I'll have something later, but I appreciate your time and patience.
Thank you, Senator Seliger.